Another high street stalwart on the brink of bankruptcy. Almost half a century after its launch, the bosses of Body Shop have called in the administrators, putting thousands of jobs in jeopardy.
That's terrible, another shop on the high street.
To be honest, I'm not really that shocked.
A shame because I used to do a lot of shopping for Body Shop.
Dame Anita Roddick broke new ground when she launched the environmentally aware brand in 1976. So, with more and more consumers going green, why did it go so wrong? Also tonight.
David Bowie and absolute beginners. Now, what a voice this guy has here. What a voice.
A sad farewell to Steve Wright, king of Zoo Radio and voice of the afternoon for decades, has died. The latest on the Rochdale by-election row. Starmer faces questions after Labour withdraws support for its candidate over anti-Israel comments. At 7, the children with special needs being denied a proper education. A special report on the shortage of specialist places, condemning thousands to miss years of school. And a smile for the camera. This year's crop of Oscar hopefuls gets ready for their big night.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. Thousands of jobs at the Body Shop hang in the balance tonight after the private equity firm which owns the chain put it into administration. The future of around 200 stores across the UK is equally unclear. It comes just weeks after Aurelius took over the running of the company, which once revolutionised the cosmetics industry. A source close to the firm told ITV News the chain had been in a far worse state than it had anticipated. And poor sales over Christmas continued into January, turning it into a loss-making business. Here's our business editor, Joel Hills, on what this means for the Body Shop brand and its staff.
The Body Shop is bust, in administration and unable to pay its bills as they fall due. But for now, it's business as usual.
That's terrible, another shop on the high street.
To be honest, I'm not really that shocked.
A shame because I used to do a lot of shopping for Body Shop, yeah.
Only 3 months ago, the German private equity firm Aurelius bought the Body Shop and pledged to return it to its former glory. Aurelius has since sold some of the overseas business to an unnamed buyer for an undisclosed sum, and it has now called in administrators to restructure the business in the UK. The Body Shop has 199 shops in the UK and employs more than 2,000 staff. The most recent accounts show that the Body Shop's sales here slumped from £275 million in 2021 to £197 million in 2022. The Body Shop's first shop was opened in Brighton in 1976. The late Anita Roddick championed fair trade consumerism and the business thrived. By the 1990s, it was on high streets everywhere. This analyst thinks that shop closures and redundancies are now inevitable.
I don't think the Body Shop needs to keep many stores, just some key stores in city centres, shopping centre locations where people can try out the products, but that estate can really be slimmed down.
How many, 100, 50?
Maybe 30.
The last few days have shown that there is still a lot of affection for the Body Shop, but fewer and fewer people are spending their money there. Something needs to change.
Sad, isn't it, Joel? Another big name at risk. How likely is it that anything of Body Shop can actually be saved?
I think that's quite hard to tell. I mean, hope dies last, Mary, but a source close to Aurelius has said that the business is clearly in a far worse shape than they thought when they agreed to the takeover deal last November, and that the Body Shop traded very, very poorly over Christmas. And both of these things are plausible, although Aurelius hasn't provided any details. What has happened today is that a court, in effect, a judge, has appointed FRP as administrator and asked them to assess the health of the business and decide on what steps are best to take. Plan A will involve trying to find a buyer for all of the shops, all of the staff and the business in its current form. It does look unlikely that that will be the case, however. But we don't know really what the latest trading detail is. We don't know how loss-making the body shop is. We don't really know how much debt it's carrying around. We do know that Aurelius does have some security over that debt, which is interesting and important because it gives the private equity firm influence in the insolvency process. It is possible, Mary, that the FRP will restructure the business, make it profitable again by cutting costs, making redundancies, closing shops, and that Aurelius will end up taking the business back.
Joel Hills in central London there, thank you. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has come under fire for initially standing by Labour's candidate for the Rochdale by-election, who'd made offensive comments about Israel. Last night, the party withdrew its support for Azhar Ali after further remarks emerged. Today, Sir Keir insisted he had acted decisively, but it's reopened old wounds around anti-Semitism within Labour, and it's raised questions about his leadership. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan reports.
Campaigning in the Rochdale by-election continues, but without the Labour Party, who have suspended their campaign and their candidate. The Labour leader today insisting he had been decisive, albeit at the second time of asking.
Further information came to light yesterday calling for decisive action, so I took decisive action. It is a huge thing to withdraw support for a Labour candidate during the course of a by-election. It's a tough decision, a necessary decision, but when I say the Labour Party has changed under my leadership, I mean it.
But Azhar Ali's initial apology for saying Israel deliberately allowed the October 7th attacks had been just enough to keep Labour's front benchers supporting him on Sunday and Monday.
He's issued a full apology and retraction last night for this. It's right that he did that.
On a basis he is our candidate, we will continue to campaign for him in the 2 weeks or so that are left.
But last night new comments emerged from the same event where Mr Ali suggested Jewish journalists had it in for suspended Labour MP Andy MacDonald.
It shouldn't have been suspended, right? It was suspended on what was said, and I know him really well, yeah, and he's a solid Palestinian, pro-Palestinian supporter. The media, and some of the people in the media from certain Jewish quarters were given about what he said.
That was the point at which Mr Ali was suspended and Labour's campaign stopped. Not that the field is completely open to the Conservatives and the others who are still campaigning. Because it is too late to remove Mr Ali's name from the ballot paper, he could still be elected. The senior lawyer who investigated anti-Semitism within Labour says Mr Ali should have been suspended for the original comments.
I found the views expressed so abhorrent, I couldn't really see what kind of apology would ever allow such a person to participate in mainstream politics.
But the government advisor on anti-Semitism, a former Labour MP, says Keir Starmer needs to investigate the selection process here.
What he needs to do is hold to account those inside the Labour Party who've overseen this selection process and have clearly not done the due diligence that was needed.
But for now, amongst the main parties, Labour are alone in being unable to advise voters in Rochdale who to vote for.
Well, Carl Dinnan reporting there. And this is the full list of candidates standing in the Rochdale by-election on Thursday, the 29th of February. We'll find more details on our website. That's itv.com/news. Now, farmers in Wales are up in arms over new plans to change their subsidies and their regulations. It would see them forced to dedicate a significant amount of their land for trees and wildlife. But farmers, including a famous former Welsh rugby referee, feel the proposals go too far. Our Wales reporter Rhys Williams heard from some of those affected.
Across Europe, angry farmers are fighting back. Yesterday, those protests reached Wales when a fleet of tractors blocked a main road outside the Wrexham office of the Welsh Government's Rural Affairs Minister. Farmers here are upset at proposed reforms which would mean 10% of their land must be planted with trees and a further 10% treated as wildlife habitat in order to be eligible for government payments. Former international rugby referee Nigel Owens recently swapped the pitch for the farm and feels the proposals go too far.
There would be no Six Nations game without the referee. There would be no food on the table without the farmer. And 10%, if 200 acres, then 20 acres of good quality has got to be turned into woodland. As a farming industry, are there things that we need to change and can do better? Yes, there is, and that is happening. But obviously as well, it has to be fair. And at the moment, what they're asking the farmers to do is simply not fair.
Farming subsidies and regulations are undergoing changes across the UK. The Welsh Government's new proposal aims to tackle climate change as well as support food production. But a recently published impact assessment of the plans by the government has alarmed the farming industry. That forecast presented what the National Farmers Union is calling a shocking scenario. It would see a near 11% reduction in the number of Welsh livestock units and an 11% reduction in labour on Welsh farms. That's the equivalent of the loss of around 5,500 jobs. Frustrated farmers have gathered across Wales in recent weeks, with some warning significant unrest is inevitable.
People are downtrodden, they're beaten.
The government insists its proposals remain under consultation, but many fear ministers are set to press ahead. We've seen mass meetings. Yesterday there were protests in Wrexham. Do you worry that this could escalate?
I do. I mean, again, farmers are desperate. They're fearful. They feel that there's not much hope left. And this is driving them to all of these skirmishes to try and make their voices heard. So again, the appeal is to the Welsh Government, please just come back to the table. We will definitely make sure we find a solution to this, because Wales has got a lot of answers and collectively we can do it.
The Rural Affairs Minister declined to be interviewed today, but last week Leslie Griffiths accepted some of her proposals would have to change. But with the relationship between those who work the land and those who govern it at an all-time low, it might not be enough to stop further protests. Rhys Williams, ITV News, the Vale of Glamorgan.
Radio DJs, past and present, have been remembering the humour, the talent and the sheer creative energy of Steve Wright following his shock death at the age of 69. He joined BBC Radio in 1980 and presented there for more than 40 years with millions of loyal listeners. He was presenting programmes as recently as Sunday and was awarded an MBE in the New Year's Honours for his radio work. Garrett Vincent looks back at his career.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Steve Wright. Welcome to Top of the Pops. We have an excited crowd.
Back in the day when Top of the Pops was essential viewing for music fans hoping to catch a glimpse of their favourite act, Steve Wright was one of the DJs who guided us through the charts every week.
Dance right now to David Bowie and Queen at #1 with Under Pressure.
Hello, good morning.
But it was, of course, on the radio that Steve Wright became part of everyday life. As the working day rolled past lunchtime, it was so often his voice that was on in the background. Steve Wright in the afternoon was a mainstay of music radio on the BBC for decades. He wanted his listeners to feel part of the gang, and his easygoing, friendly approach to broadcasting drew in millions of them.
He was a one-off. He was one of those great one-offs like Kenny Everett or Terry Wogan. And when they're gone, they don't come back again. We only hope that they have inspired vocations in younger people to be as unique, as daring, as brave as he was.
Inspire, he certainly did. A new generation of broadcasters, one of whom spoke of her sense of loss on air today.
Steve was an extraordinary broadcaster, a really, really kind person. He was witty, he was warm, and he was a huge, huge part of the Radio 2 family. And I know my fellow DJs will all be absolutely shattered too. And I imagine you're feeling sad too.
Radio 2 has announced plans to celebrate his life with a range of special programming. The station's boss said tonight that Steve Wright understood the connection and companionship that radio engenders better than anyone, and we all loved him for it.
Remembering Steve Wright, whose death has been announced. OK, well, let's take a look at some other news now. And taking steps towards potentially recognising a Palestinian state as part of a peace process is not rewarding Hamas, Lord Cameron has said. The Foreign Secretary was defending past remarks which prompted a backlash a few weeks ago when he discussed the need to give the Palestinian people a political horizon as part of efforts to end the Israel-Hamas war. And official figures have shown that the rate of unemployment fell slightly in December. Figures from the Office for National Statistics also showed that wages rose for the 6th time in a row. Now, a man has appeared in court accused of masterminding an armed robbery which saw police officer Sharon Beshnevsky killed and her colleagues seriously injured. Prosecutors say 75-year-old Pirandita Khan evaded capture for almost 20 years before finally being extradited from Pakistan. John Hill is at Leeds Crown Court for us. John, what did the jury hear today?
Well, prosecutors have opened their case today, outlining to jurors events that took place more than 18 years ago. In fact, it was the afternoon of the 18th of November 2005 when West Yorkshire Police Officer PC Sharon Beshanivsky, together with a colleague, PC Teresa Milburn, responded to an alarm of a robbery taking place at a travel agent's in Bradford. Now, jurors were told that 3 robbers had opened fire with a submachine gun inside the travel agents, and that within 30 seconds of the 2 unarmed officers arriving at the scene, both had been shot at point-blank range in the chest. PC Beshanivsky died from her injuries, but in the frantic scenes that followed, PC Milburn was able to give a partial description of just what had happened. She survived her injuries. Now, the prosecution has told the jury that the 3 robbers were in fact part of a 7-strong gang, and the ringleader of that gang was the man in the dock now, Pirandita Khan, aged 75. They say that although he didn't pull the trigger, he was in the safety of a lookout car nearby, and he was complicit in what happened. 6 men since then have been convicted for their part in what did happen, 3 of murder, 2 of manslaughter and 1 of robbery, but prosecutors say Pirandita Khan fled to Pakistan. He was extradited back from there to the UK last year to stand trial. He denies a charge of murder and a number of firearms offences. This trial is expected to last up to 6 weeks.
John Hill at Leeds Crown Court, thank you. Well, there is plenty still to come on the ITV Evening News, including: is the latest government plan to boost housing merely a sticking plaster? Proposals to build on brownfield sites have been panned by construction companies and charities alike, who say it's not enough to solve the crisis. A mother's warning to parents about giving young children slushies after a 4-year-old boy ends up in hospital. And could a shortage of tea be on the way? You might want to put the kettle on right now. Join me for those stories and more after the break. See you then. Hello and welcome back. Now, the government's latest plans to get more homes built in England have been criticised by house builders and also by housing charities. Ministers want every English council to prioritise building on brownfield sites. The proposals would also make it easier to repurpose office blocks, shops and offices into homes. But critics say it won't solve the housing shortage crisis. Our political correspondent Harry Horton is in Westminster with more on this. Harry.
Well, look, no surprise that the lack of affordable homes, the supply of homes, is a huge political issue right now. And the government is under pressure because of its own failure to meet its own housing targets. At the last election, the government said that it planned to build 1 million new homes by the time of this coming election. And the government's own estimates show that 300,000 new homes are needed every year. But the latest data shows that it's falling short of that figure, with around 234,000 homes delivered in 2023. Now, to try and address this shortfall, the government has made this announcement today about encouraging 20 English cities to build on brownfield land if those local authorities are failing to meet their targets. Here's what the Housing Secretary Michael Gove had to say about this.
One of the great things of building on brownfield sites like here in Lochside is that you can make sure that the facilities that you need are already close at hand. Rather than swallowing up valuable greenbelt land, which often doesn't have the schools, the GP surgeries or the transport connections close at hand, you can provide people with all the services that they need and the new homes that we want to see.
Well, absent from the government's announcement today was any numbers about how many homes this might deliver, and there is scepticism from housing charities about how many homes this could deliver.
Our major concern is this is a relatively small announcement compared to the big announcement that was made before Christmas by the Housing Secretary, which effectively did away with local housing targets and will lead to, and is leading to, far fewer homes being built across the country. So today's announcement, although welcome, really won't help in terms of delivering the number of homes that we need across the country.
Well, lots of this is about politics, of course, and I think it's about the Conservative Party trying to put pressure on Labour, answering the question about where they would build homes if they were in power, rather than necessarily about the Conservatives delivering hundreds of thousands of new homes every year.
OK, Harry Horton at Westminster, thank you. The mother of a 4-year-old boy who was rushed to hospital after drinking a slushie has warned parents to think twice before giving them to very young children. Albie Pegg became disorientated and started biting himself after drinking a slushie at a bowling alley. The doctors said he'd reacted to one of the ingredients, glycerol, which should never be given to the under-5s. Martha Fairley has more.
With their bright colours and sweet flavours, slush ice drinks are popular with young children. But after drinking a strawberry slushie for a treat while at a bowling alley last year, 4-year-old Albie Pegg ended up in hospital.
He had started hallucinating, he had started clawing at himself, biting me, biting himself. He couldn't really couldn't comprehend what was happening and what was making him go like this. So by the time we got to the A&E, he was sort of a dead weight. They tried to get a response out of him, they couldn't. So then he got whisked into the resus room.
Doctors believe Albie's reaction was caused by glycerol in the low-sugar slushie he'd drunk. Glycerol is an additive used to provide sweetness and texture in slush ice drinks. Children's bodies can't process it as well as adults, and in extreme cases it can cause shock, low blood sugar and loss of consciousness. Food safety experts say under 10s should limit their consumption of slushies containing glycerol, while under 4s should avoid them completely. 50 million slush ice drinks are consumed in the UK each year, but in the past 3 years, 5 children have fallen ill. 2 of them after voluntary industry guidelines were issued last August.
We've worked closely with industry and they have issued clear guidelines to people buying their products. But the key message really that we want to get out today is twofold. Firstly, to parents to be aware of this too, because it is tricky if you're a parent, you're bombarded by information. And secondly, for people at the point of sale who may not necessarily have seen that guidance, to really make sure they understand it and use it when they're selling these drinks and selling them appropriately.
Albie's mum says although there were warning signs at the bowling alley, they weren't clearly visible. And she says with proper staff training and better information for customers, Albie's illness could have been avoided. Martha Fairley, ITV News.
If you are drinking a cuppa right now, you may want to make the most of it, because Sainsbury's Supermarket and Tetley have both warned there could be shortages due to the attacks on shipping in the Red Sea, and Ellie Pitt is here. I count myself as a serious tea drinker, Ellie, so I'm obviously very concerned about this, but how serious might this be?
Well, look, there are delays to deliveries of many products at the moment, sometimes up to 2 weeks, because cargo ships are having to take longer but safer routes to the UK, round the bottom of the coastline of Africa instead of through the Suez Canal, because of Houthi rebels attacking containment ships in the Red Sea. So a sign has appeared in Sainsbury's warning shoppers that they're experiencing supply issues affecting black tea, and some shoppers have taken pictures of empty spaces on shelves. Tetley have told us tonight that at the moment it's much tighter than we would like. This is a critical period which requires our constant attention, but we're pretty confident that we can maintain supply levels. So I think before everyone rushes out and panic buys tea, it's also important to know that the Retail Consortium have told us that this is a temporary problem and that customers are expected to experience minimal disruption. Look, if there's a certain brand of tea you like, it might be tricky to get hold of it for a little while, but this is very much about delays to deliveries rather than a shortage of supply at the source. And I think everybody will still be able to have a cup of tea.
All right, I feel reassured. Thank you, Ellie. You are watching the ITV Evening News. It is coming up to 7 o'clock, and here's what's still ahead before Emmerdale. The King returns to London, where he will continue with his cancer treatment. Thousands of takeaway delivery drivers are set to walk out on Valentine's Day in a row over pay and conditions. Gearing up for the Oscars, we hear from the Brits involved in one of the year's biggest box office hits.
The craftsmanship that was all built in the UK, of those waves that were carved, extraordinary and beautifully painted.
And how one Wrexham family's fundraising effort was given a £10,000 boost by 2 Hollywood stars.
And will you be breaking the trend, sending seasonal flowers tomorrow? Well, did you know growing them is a lot harder, especially when the weather's not playing ball? More in the forecast later.
Well, that is all still to come. But first, ITV News has learned that thousands of children with additional special needs in England, Wales and Scotland aren't getting access to proper education. Many of them don't even have a place at a school at all. It means they're missing months, in some cases even years of learning. Now, it affects pupils who have an education healthcare plan, which is also known as an EHCP. Now, it's used by local authorities to specify additional support that children need. But places at specialist schools are in very short supply, and one parent told us it'd be like winning the lottery if they could actually get their child in. And many say the support system isn't just letting them down, it's not working at all. Our social affairs correspondent Stacey Foster reports.
Kudus, come on to get some sand.
Kudus hasn't been to school in almost 2 years, and he's only 6.
Listen, listen, listen. Ears, listening ears.
Because he has autism, his mainstream school said it couldn't meet his needs.
Wait.
The specialist school that does have a place for him is too far away. And Kudus's mum says it wasn't delivering the additional support they'd been promised.
So they kept sending me back to the council and saying the council wasn't funding it. Whenever I go to the council, get down, get down, get down. So when I went to the council would tell me, oh, it's the school that is in charge of the funding. And I was getting really upset and frustrated because he wasn't getting therapies and they couldn't get him to learn. So he wasn't developing, so to speak. So I was like, okay. So I was thinking, okay, maybe this is the wrong setting. I'll find another setting for him.
No. An appeal found in favour of the council. And so there is nowhere else to go, and Kudus is falling behind.
So I just have that worry and that fear of what's going to happen to my child at the end of the day. What's going to happen to him? Why are we not being listened to? Why are we being blocked? Why is he not getting what everybody else is? That's his basic right, and he's not getting it.
Kudus has an Education, Health and Care Plan, or EHCP, which is a legal document that specifies what additional support a child needs up to the age of 25. Exclusive data obtained by ITV News has found that 8,660 children in England, Wales and Scotland who have an EHCP are still not accessing any formal education. And 5,254 children in England and Wales who have an EHCP don't even have a school place. Bo is 9. She hasn't been to mainstream school for 17 months.
And you don't really do learning, you just basically look after the animals.
She's on her way to farm school. This alternative provision, which happens once a week, is on her EHCP because she has autism. But what she really needs is a place at a specialist school.
When do you think she will be in school? I know that it's like a lottery. It's like winning the lottery because there are not enough spaces. So even though there are a few schools that I would like Bo to go to and that I know Bo will be doing very well there, if they think they can't meet her needs, then they'll say no, and then we're back to square one. And then I don't know what to do.
If you remember, we've been looking at the different conventions that we need to have in a piece of travel writing.
This is how they teach English at one of the country's largest special schools. It might look similar to a mainstream setting, but here the teachers are trained in neurodivergence.
What do you notice?
More than half of the pupils have an EHCP, and some travel for over an hour to get here.
We don't do anything one-to-one. We provide no classroom assistance. We don't take our pupils out of their normal classes in order to receive specialist support. But typically one teacher, 14 or 15 pupils, all of whom have diagnosed special educational needs.
But there are also thousands of children like Sonny who are waiting to be assessed. He has autism with ADHD and OCD and struggles to attend mainstream school.
Why didn't you want to go to school today?
Because I don't really learn anything in school. Because even when I'm in lessons, it's just not very good. I never really learn anything.
Sonny's mum says he is trapped in the system.
I did ask for a reduced timetable of 3 days a week, and that request was declined, and I was told that Sonny had to do 5 days a week, fail at that first, and then we would be granted 3-day week, which is just...
Where do you even start to fix this problem?
We need an overhaul of the whole system, really, but we need funding really badly. We need teacher training really badly. We need smaller class sizes really badly. We need more specialist schools.
But for the families of children with additional needs, life is challenging enough without the added pressure of a support system that is working against them.
You can really see the frustration, can't you, and the upset and all of that with these parents. What is being done, if anything, to actually address this problem?
Well, there are now more than 500,000 children in England alone with an EHCP, and it's growing every single year. Councils recognise this is an issue and it is costing a lot of money. Part of that is because we're now better at spotting children who need extra support in schools, but the system just hasn't caught up. The government published its strategy last year. It wants a national standard across the country, so you've not got this postcode variance, but implementation is likely not to happen until possibly next year, and we know there's a general election to come as well. Meanwhile, these are real children on waiting lists up and down the country. Their childhoods are passing them by without a formal education, and that is lost learning that they can never recover.
Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it? Stacey Foster, thank you. And you can hear more on Stacey's investigation on our What You Need to Know podcast. And there you'll find further details on the issue facing families and also some possible solutions. Listen in wherever you get your podcasts. OK, well, let's get an update now on what is making the news tonight. Thousands of jobs at the Body Shop could go after the private equity firm which owns the chain put it into administration. The future of around 200 stores across the UK is unclear. The BBC Radio DJ Steve Wright has died at the age of 69. He presented shows at the network for more than 40 years with millions of loyal listeners, and he was awarded an MBE in the New Year's Honours for his radio work. And Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has come under fire for initially standing by Labour's candidate for the Rochdale by-election, who made offensive comments about Israel. Last night, the party withdrew support for Azhar Ali after further remarks emerged. Today, Sir Keir insisted he had acted decisively. Well, our political correspondent Carl Dinnan is in Rochdale for us tonight. And Carl, this evening another candidate has also been suspended.
That's right, Mary. After another part of the same recording from the same meeting was released, this time via the Guido Fawkes website, the Labour candidate for nearby Hyndburn, Graham Jones, former MP, was heard in that recording to allegedly say that British people who go to fight for Israel should be locked up. And this evening, he has been suspended as a parliamentary candidate by the Labour Party, pending an investigation into those comments. And a little bit more information has emerged in the last few minutes about the meeting the men were talking about. I understand that it was not a Labour meeting as such, but a wider community meeting. There were just 3 Labour representatives there. Azhar Ali and Graham Jones, both now suspended, and a third man, Munsif Dad, who's the Labour leader on the Hyndburn Borough Council. They were all at this meeting. Now, the broader picture here is that, of course, Keir Starmer's opponents are using all this to attack him and to say that Labour still has a problem with anti-Semitism. His allies, on the other hand, say that the suspension show that he is taking a tough line against it.
OK, Carl Dinnan, thank you. Now, thousands of delivery drivers are staging a Valentine's Day strike, demanding better pay and conditions. The drivers work for food ordering platforms, including Deliveroo, Just Eat and Uber Eats. Charlie Frost reports on what's behind the strike and what the impact could be.
A year ago, a rainy day would have meant a busy day of deliveries for Anna. But now she says the number of orders is down and the amount she's paid has been slashed.
I'm working since 11 and right now I just make...
It's about 3 o'clock now.
Yeah, it's 3 o'clock. I make 3 orders here in Deliveroo. It's £18 in one and Stuart app. It's 4 orders. It's £11 in 4 hours. I make, I don't know, yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Angry, very angrily.
Anna's one of a predicted 3,000 delivery app riders striking tomorrow, hoping to disrupt Valentine's Day plans across the country as riders press for better pay and conditions. But app-based delivery drivers are classified as self-employed contractors, so employers aren't legally obliged to pay them the national living wage, instead setting pay per delivery as they like. This Nepalese restaurant relies on delivery drivers. They were hoping for big takings tomorrow. Now they say the strike will mean they take a financial hit.
A lot of our regulars and customers, they tend to order from home, and we're very busy in the evening, so the riders are very important to us. The delivery business is important for us, so I hope they find a solution soon.
Deliveroo say they aim to give riders attractive earning opportunities and protections, while Just Eat says their data shows their workers earn on average significantly over both the London and national living wage for the time they're on an order. And Uber Eats says the vast majority of couriers are satisfied with their experience and they regularly look at how they can improve. But riders like Anna say it's their pay that needs to improve, meaning heartbreak for many hoping to order in this Valentine's Day. Charlie Frost, ITV News.
The King returned to London today for what's thought to be more cancer treatment. Charles has suspended his public duties following his diagnosis, but he is continuing with his other roles as head of state. And our royal editor Chris Shipp is at Buckingham Palace for us tonight. Chris, what are you able to tell us about what's going on?
Well, Mary, the King set a pattern today that he's very likely to follow in the coming weeks, in that he'll come to London for 1 or 2 nights to receive his cancer treatment and then he'll to return to one of his homes. He's been at Sandringham, for example, recently in order for that treatment to take effect. Now, look, Buckingham Palace are very happy, content for him to be photographed as he landed in the helicopter from Sandringham today, got in the car with Queen Camilla for the short drive up to Clarence House, where they stay when they're in London. But they're not content with him being photographed as he goes to and from hospital to have his cancer treatment administered. Remember, he's pretty much now withdrawn from public duties completely. If he's in London, he can, of course, meet the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, for face-to-face meetings and now the other meetings he needs to do in London. But whilst we're not seeing him, Queen Camilla is continuing her engagement. She's got quite a lot of them this week. But, you know, the flag up at the palace here tonight shows the King's in London, but he will be going back to Sandringham or Highgrove, sometimes even Balmoral, while the treatment takes effect.
OK, Chris Shipp at Buckingham Palace, thank you. Look at some other news now. The Premier League has approved Sir Jim Ratcliffe's proposed bid to buy 25% of Manchester United. In a filing to the Securities and Exchange Commission on Monday, the club said it had already been granted approval under its rules over who is allowed to be an owner or director. The deal is still subject to Football Association approval. The former England manager Sven-Göran Eriksson, who's recently been diagnosed with cancer, has been granted his wish of managing his favourite club, Liverpool. He'll take charge of the team for a charity game against the Dutch side Ajax in March. The 76-year-old revealed his cancer diagnosis last month. And the England captain Leah Williamson is back in the Lionesses squad for the first time since recovering from injury. The 26-year-old missed the World Cup after suffering an anterior cruciate ligament injury in April, but she returned to action with Arsenal recently and got the call-up from Serena Wiegman. Now to stars of the silver screen now, and the annual pre-Oscars lunch has whetted the appetite for next month's ceremony. Many of the stars up for Academy Awards were at the event in Los Angeles, but it wasn't a well-known face who actually stole the show, as our entertainment reporter Rishi Davda explains.
An annual assembly of industry excellence. It's just under a month until the Academy Awards, but the nominee luncheon means the countdown has well and truly started.
You know isotopes, and you know explosives.
But you can't tell us what you're doing.
Oppenheimer took top spot with 13 nominations, including nods for British-born director Christopher Nolan and lead actor Cillian Murphy. The biopic, his 6th film with Nolan, but he won't be following in his footsteps.
Just when you see the level of commitment and brilliance and brain power and responsibility, for me the responsibility of just turning up and getting it right. I enjoy producing, but directing, no.
And your sad face makes me discover angry feelings for
British film Poor Things, starring Emma Stone, earned 11 nominations and is tipped for multiple statues.
Hi Barbie. Hi Barbie. Hi Barbie. Hi Barbie.
And despite snubs for director Greta Gerwig and actor Margot Robbie, Barbie still secured 8 nominations, a celebration of the hours of work in front and behind the camera.
Everybody talks about Barbieland, but there's the beach sequence,
Yes,
and I
that's
think
true, yeah.
when you look at, the craftsmanship that was all built in the UK, of those waves that were carved, extraordinary and beautifully painted. The Barbie cars. We made 5 Barbie cars, and they all drove. But the people who made it were the same people who made the Batmobile,
and they loved it. We're all Kens, we're all Barbies.
The luncheon provides the famous nominee class photo, more than 180 of them in attendance. But it was a border collie named Messi that stole the show. He plays Snoop in the movie Anatomy of a Fall, and travelled from France to Los Angeles to rub shoulders with the likes of Ryan Gosling and Bradley Cooper.
You must be midlife crisis, Ken.
No.
Lost everything in the divorce, Ken?
No.
Comedian Jimmy Kimmel will host the Oscars on the 10th of March, when all the nominees will be back together, each hoping their name will be inside the golden envelope. Rishi Davda, ITV News.
And you can catch the 96th Academy Awards free on ITV1 and ITVX on Sunday, the 10th of March. Now, a man has become the oldest person to dive at the World Aquatics Championships at the age of 100. Taghi Askari, who's been diving since he was a teenager, took to the diving board at the competition in Doha on Friday to perform his exhibition dive. He was 41 years old when he last competed at a national level. Coming up on the programme, a little help from Hollywood. A Wrexham fan's surprise donation from the club's superstar owners.
And with Valentine's Day tomorrow, will you be going for the more traditional red rose or something seasonal and a bit more environmentally friendly? Find out more in the forecast. That's next.
That's me and Alex after the break. See you then. Hello and welcome back. Time for the weather now. With Valentine's Day tomorrow, Alex is at a flower farm, but it's one with a difference, isn't it, Alex?
That's right, Mary. This is a sustainable flower farm where there's a big push for field to vase, and that's arguably needed when you consider that most of the estimated 55 million roses that will be sold for Valentine's Day here in the UK would have been grown abroad, and some of them even in artificial conditions. But with more and more of us becoming more environmentally aware, well, there is a big push for the seasonal bouquet of flowers, which I have here. And flower farms are increasing in numbers up and down the country. And I've come to this one, which is in Hampshire, in the South Downs National Park, where today the weather has been, well, I have to say, fairly miserable. It's been wet, it's been cloudy, it's been mild, which isn't a bad thing for growing flowers. However, the changing conditions does make it a bit harder to grow flowers here in the UK.
As a farmer, you can cope with a temperature which remains, you know, like in the good old days, you used to have cold weather, and you'd know that, and you would grow accordingly. Now, you know, you can get ridiculously high temperatures. It's sort of, you know, in March or even January, whatever, and then it suddenly plummets, and plants can't cope with that.
Well, the forecast cold snap at the end of the month won't be great news, but it is going to be staying mild for now. Let's take a quick look at our air mass chart, and you can see that there's going to be feeding in mild air coming in on a pretty strong jet stream, but that also means unsettled conditions and further outbreaks of rain, which we're going to take a look at right now.
The warm weather continues. So why not squeeze the most out of the day? Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.
Well, if you are hoping for that romantic stroll tomorrow, do bring a brolly with you. It's going to be fairly unsettled with outbreaks of rain, but it will be staying on the mild side. Let's take a quick look again at that pressure chart and get confirmation of that unsettled weather which is going to be coming in for tomorrow. So you can see we've got low pressure very much in control, outbreaks of rain. There also could be a squeeze in the isobar, so breezy at times, particularly out towards some coastal parts in the west in particular. As for this evening and overnight, well, we've had rain around for much of today. That rain will gradually make its way further north, but ahead of it across much of Scotland, it will be a dry, clearer night, and here's where we're going to have our coldest temperatures. In fact, rural parts of Scotland, those sheltered glens, could get down to something like -6 or -7. Further south, though, it's going to be much milder with the cloudy skies and the outbreaks of rain, so in double digits. In fact, those nighttime lows higher than what we'll be seeing in the daytime for this time of year in February. Pressing on into tomorrow then, it will be a mild start. We're going to see again further outbreaks of rain coming through, cloudy skies for many of us, and that rain even reaching Scotland come the end of the day tomorrow. Temperatures are going to be above average as you'd expect with the run that we're having at the moment. Highs of 14, 15 degrees Celsius in the southeast. There's even talk of 16 as we get towards Thursday.
Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.
So, Mary, growing conditions not too bad at the moment, but with a cold snap possible at the end of the month, it could cause some trouble in the flower world.
Right, Alex, thank you. And finally tonight, the 4-year-old Wrexham fan who's been given a remarkable gift from the club's Hollywood owners. Louis Perrin has a rare genetic condition, which means he has painful leg spasms, limited mobility, epilepsy and cerebral palsy. And when Rob McElhenney and Ryan Reynolds saw his parents' fundraising appeal to adapt their home, they did not hesitate to donate £10,000. Kelly Foran heard what it means for the family.
Come on, let me go upstairs. Upstairs.
Louis' short life has been full of challenges and bad news.
A genesis of the corpus callosum, which is the middle part of the brain missing, cerebral palsy, so that affects him from his waist down.
Challenges too for his family, who are fundraising to adapt their home for his ever-changing and ever-growing needs.
He's quite an intelligent little boy and very determined. So when he can't do something that he wants to do because of the layout of the property and steps and that kind of thing, he gets really frustrated, and it's really upsetting for him and for us as a family to see him like that.
But now, finally, some good news. Just a mile down the road is Wrexham Football Club. Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, who famously brought so much joy, are doing the same for one of its biggest fans. Their donation of £10,000 will help Louis live downstairs.
So how did you feel when you saw who donated?
Gobsmacked. It's just the amount and the interest that it sparked. But I don't think they quite realised maybe how much of an impact that it'll have on us as a family.
And getting help from Hollywood has made him a bit of a star himself.
Who's that? Who's that?
What the football club is doing for Louis goes far beyond what happens on the pitch. Kelly Foran, ITV News, Wrexham.
That's a great story, and that's all for now. Tom's here at 10 from me and the Evening News team. Bye-bye.